Welcome to today's video. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am and what is most important to me in life. As the title of the book says, taking this totally out of context, but I am more than just a carpenter. I was a police officer for 30 years, grew up in a Christian family. Parents attended a Baptist church, and my dad was active as a deacon in the church and so on. And I sort of grew up with that whole way of life and going to Sunday school and Bible camp and all those sorts of things. And I did get baptized when I was 16 years old. And looking back, I think that was just something I did because it was expected of me. Not sure that it really took, so to speak. Then I became a police officer when I was 21. I started everything early in life, got married when I was 19. Same year, built a house with my wife, Antonita. I was an apprentice carpenter at the time. And once I got on the police force, I would say I excelled as an officer. I really enjoyed the job. I flourished. I was interested in self-defense training and became one of the self-defense trainers very on in my career. And then about 4 years into my career, I was selected for the tactical team and sent on a course, basically like a land-based Navy SEALs course. But in any event, I made it through that and was involved on the tactical team in different aspects, and for a very long time as a team sergeant or the supervisor, officer in charge, so to speak. And I did a lot of scary things on that team. Looking back, I have no idea how I did them because I have a problem with anxiety that arose out of policing, I believe. And I was also bullied as a child, as a young boy. And I think that sort of played into that whole anxious outlook on life. But anyway, it was, I would say almost 20 years into my police career where I had a real encounter with Jesus Christ. I had a real encounter, a real change in my faith walk. As strange as this sounds, I had a real awakening to my mortality. And that came about through a number of things. The biggest thing, I guess, would be health issues that I struggled with. Some stomach problems and that sort of thing, and precancerous condition in my esophagus. But anyway, I lost my father-in-law, who was very dear to me during that time, to cancer, and it just awakened me to the reality of mortality. And I started to wonder about these things that I'd learned as a child and as a teenager about the scriptures, and I started to question a little bit, or a lot, I guess. Were the scriptures written as a very carefully crafted novel, or was there truth to it? And I began a search of my own, and also did some time as a detective during my career up to that point. And I started looking at things as a detective, and I started sending questions to the Billy Graham Evangelistic Society and the 1-800 number they have. And I read a number of books. One would be More Than a Carpenter by Josh McDowell. Another one called A Surprise by Faith by Don Bierle. And another one of biggest popularity, I suppose, would be The Case for Christ. And that book was written by a Chicago Tribune reporter. whose wife had become a Christian, and he basically didn't want her to follow this cult, and he did an investigation, and in all three of these examples, these people became believers because they found that the resurrection in particular really did happen. And I did that same sort of journey and investigation, and I came away thinking, yes, the resurrection did happen. And I'm going to die eventually, like everyone. And then I need to make peace with God through Jesus Christ. And that's what I did. When I say that I made peace with Christ, what I'm getting at is I made a commitment to be a follower of Jesus Christ. Now, contrary to what you'll sometimes hear, is becoming a Christian is not a matter of saying a magic prayer. Jesus in his teachings, he never said, "Repeat after me." He said, "Follow me." And that's what being a Christian is all about. There's a transformation that happens too, and it's kind of mysterious. I would say not kind of mysterious, it is very mysterious. What Christianity means is that Christ lives through you, and you become a reflection of Christ in your life to other people, and your family, of course, and all these sorts of things. Of course, we're still human when we still make mistakes, but there is a transformation that takes place. And I really enjoy reading the writings of Paul in the New Testament, and what he likens this to is that we are treasures in jars of clay. We are letters from Christ. We are reflections of Christ. We are the aroma of Christ to others. This is how Christianity works. And I understand that if you're not a Christian and you're new to this sort of thing, it's kind of sounding really weird. And I can assure you, I'm not a weird person. I'm pretty practical. I think things out very well before I take steps in anything I do. That's what led me to be, a pretty good detective when I worked on the police force. And sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and both in the Christian life and also in policing, I found that to be so true. The sort of the teaching or the philosophy that police officers had, and when I first started on the job, was you got to follow your gut. Well, that sort of old school thinking and following your gut doesn't really work all the time, because your gut can be wrong. What you have to do is you have to follow or find out what the objective truth is in any situation. And there's only one set of truth. Whether or not you're a proponent of the whole thought of whatever is true for you, it works. Well, there's only one truth to every set of circumstances. There's only one true version of the details or the evidence of a homicide, for example. You can have all the philosophies and gut feelings and everything else that you want, but there's only one set of facts. The three different books I mentioned are also similar to another book that I've come to really enjoy, and that is called Cold Case Christianity. It's written by J. Warner Wallace, who is a homicide detective with LA County Police Force. And He wrote a really, really important book called Cold Case Christianity. And he, again, was an atheist. He was not a believer. His wife was interested in raising the children with some religious beliefs, so he decided to join her at church and then got himself a Bible and started reading it. And he came to the conclusion that the accounts of the New Testament were true. The Gospels, the stories of Christ, were true. And he's an expert in statement analysis and that sort of evidence gathering. And I'm very interested and also trained in that area as well. So that really hit home with me that what I was believing about the resurrection in particular and the life of Jesus as told by the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the Bible, very real. And there's, I don't have time to go into all the little nuances that lead me to this conclusion, but certainly one of the biggest things is that the science of textual criticism shows that the copies of the Bible, which were, of course, originally copied by hand, they're actually transcribed very close to each other and very accurately, which scientists, and this is just scientists in general, not necessarily Christian scientists, but scientists have discovered that the textual criticism tests that the Bible has been looked at through show that it's a very accurate book. So that is something you would have to investigate yourself. There's also a whole bunch of little different clues when you're reading the letters of Paul, for example. You'll read things like, when you come to Troas, bring my cloak and the scrolls. Well, when people make up a fictional story or a fictional statement, they don't include stuff like that in it. Another one is the story of the disciples catching a huge catch of fish after Jesus tells them to cast their net on the other side. And the Gospels record that there was 153 fish. Now, again, if you're making up an alibi or a false statement, you don't include little things like that, 153 fish. And what is obvious to me is that the reason they mentioned there's 153 fish is that these guys were commercial fishermen and they would have been selling those fish in market, so obviously they would count them. In any case, the afterlife, the reality of death, is something that is really important, and you owe it to yourself to grab a newer version of the New Testament, like an NIV, New International Version, that's easy to understand as written in modern day English, and read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, the four Gospels, and read the whole New Testament, and you may discover what I've just mentioned. It's not a big undertaking to read the New Testament. I mean, think about it. Our year, right now as I'm talking, is 2023. That is the year based on the life of Christ. That's what our calendar is based on. And I realize they want to change that and all that, but that's the reality. All our laws in Western society are based on the Ten Commandments. Again, they want to change that, but that's the reality. So obviously something happened that is very significant over 2,000 years ago or so during the life of Christ. No one else in history has been that significant that we set our calendar after that person. Now, the other thing that I think is really important to remember when you're considering the validity of the Gospels, lots of people will talk about conspiracies and that, the disciples hid the body or whatnot of Christ. And I can tell you from investigating criminal cases that it's difficult to get two people to stick together, keep their stories straight in a conspiracy, never mind, 11 or 12. And the other thing to remember is certainly people will commit fraud and that sort of thing when there's something to gain, financial gain. There was no financial gain for the disciples. In fact, out of the 12 disciples, 11 of them were martyred for their faith. Peter was crucified upside down. Many of them were put to the sword, so on. But knowingly, unless people are delusional, people don't die for a lie. We know about the Jonestown massacre where a whole bunch of people drank the Kool-Aid and that sort of thing, but that's a different story. That's a cult activity. And no, I'm talking about, ordinary people don't die for something they made up when there's no financial gain for it, or regardless of financial gain. But anyway, that's another thing I want to mention that really spoke to me about the validity of the story of Christ. The scriptures also say that 500 people, more than 500 people saw Christ after he was resurrected. And probably you would know the story of Doubting Thomas, someone who observed Jesus with his wounds from the crucifixion after the resurrection. And the Bible says that, or the Gospels say that blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed, and that includes you and I. And I think that's just a really important thing to consider. Yeah, thanks for listening. If you've made it this far in the video, obviously you're not upset and click this off and want nothing to do with hearing this kind of nonsense. But please share the video with someone that may enjoy it. I'm hoping that this does a couple of different things. One is to encourage other Christians out there that are living the life. And I know that I find hearing stories from other Christians about how they came to faith and how they, apply their faith to everyday life, I find that really encouraging. So I hope that if you're a believer, that you're encouraged. And if you are encouraged, please leave me a comment. And the reason I ask that is that helps the video. And, there's no point in doing, I guess there is a point in doing a YouTube video that nobody ever listens to, but the more it's shared, the more likes that the video receives, the more successful it will be, and the more YouTube will send it to other people. And that's just reality. And of course, my biggest goal here is, other than just being true to my faith and really, being honest and vulnerable a little bit and telling people about my Christian faith, which is what we're instructed to do, by the way. I hope that somebody becomes a believer in and through, listening to this video, or maybe it's something that really sort of clicked with you. And again, I'd like to hear your comment. In any case, I really enjoy doing YouTube videos, and I really enjoy sharing my knowledge of carpentry. That's my primary focus, of course. And just to let you know, I'm not the best carpenter in the world. I'm certainly not the best YouTube guy in the world, but I have a desire to do good and to do the right thing and to help and encourage others. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.